welcome to the Laura Show. You guys are in for a special treat because it's twice the fun with double the Lauras. I'm here with rock star mortgage broker Laura Martin. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like we're going to get into some of your backstory. We were just talking before we started filming, and you have such an interesting and vibrant life that we will definitely get into. But one of the main reasons I brought you here today was because I feel like a lot of my audience and my listeners are women who are, wanting to build a life for themselves. And they come and they tune in to get inspired by other stories, by other women, whether it be business owners or people trying to give life hacks and tips and tricks so they can live a healthier, more fruitful kind of life. Which is why I thought of having a mortgage broker on. Now, obviously I'm a real estate agent, and so I work with lots of mortgage brokers. So this ties into what I do for a living as well. But I really want to kind of focus the conversation today around how we can help women and of course other people as well. It doesn't have to be women, but obviously us both being women, coming from the perspective of how we can build wealth, how we can take control of our finances, and just have a little bit more control over some things that we may have neglected in the past. And I'm going to speak from a bit of personal experience myself. I'm married. I have a house, but when my husband and I bought the house, it really was my husband's decision in terms of how much we could afford, what we were going to buy. Obviously, I gave my 2 cents in the fact that this is what I like, but from a financial perspective, I wasn't that involved. And even to this day, quite frankly, I know I need to be more involved. If someone said, how much money do you spend on XYZ, I don't have the full picture. And so I really wanted to bring you in to really help with that.
I'm glad you have.
Yeah, I think a great place to start with all of this is just to talk about what's most recent, which is that interest rates have gone up. Again, here we go. We just came off, I think it was 2 where they stayed the same, and now we've gone up again. And so I wanted,
rate hikes.
7 rate hikes in a year and a bit, perhaps.
18 months.
So maybe you can talk about and use layman's terms if you don't mind, because the average person, obviously we're in the business.
Yeah.
So we talk about this all day, every day with people, but the average person isn't talking about this. What does it mean, another rate hike to them?
Well, on average, anyone that had a variable rate mortgage has seen their payments go up at least 40%, if not double, and in some cases triple. I've seen some really frightening scenarios where people have a fixed payment amount, but their rates have increased. So what this means is the amortization period, or the time it'll take you to pay that mortgage off, has doubled. I've seen 70-year amortizations, and that means that you're actually collecting this balloon payment that was up to 40, 50 grand in this particular case that I'm thinking of, on top of what they owed. So it's honestly worse than a private mortgage. They were in negative payments.
Right.
So it's really important for both parties, but particularly if you're a woman and if you've been just kind of trusting that your bank has your back, or that your husband's on the case, or that your partner's on the case of whatever gender. No, don't assume that, right? The bank works for the bank. And they didn't tell this person that their amortization got extended to 70 years, and now they owe an extra 40 grand.
And so what's really happening is, I guess, that people are just getting in the mail, hey, your mortgage has gone up, and it's been sticker shock to a lot of people, because so many of us for such a long time, everyone kept saying variable rate's the way to go. This is the way you win long term. And I'm not necessarily suggesting otherwise. Perhaps you can touch on the difference between variable and fixed. But obviously fixed has built in less risk, and for times like these, that's when you kind of either pat yourself on the back for saying thank goodness I went with the fixed, or go, oh shit, now I have to ride this wave. But hopefully if you pick variable, you kind of built in that buffer for yourself. But I don't think a lot of people do that.
That's what the stress test was supposed to do. So CMHC imposed something called the stress test in 2017, where you had to qualify for your mortgage based on 2 percentage points more than your actual rate. So this, and thank God, because it has gone up well more than 2% now, right? But
we almost wish we built in more of a stress test.
And of course, as a mortgage broker, I was lamenting the stress test because, my clients can't qualify for more, and that's so sad. But now we can see that they were right to do it. But what that
sometimes
means,
those things we hate are actually there to help us, save us from ourselves, so to speak.
Yeah, true. But then people still, it's not like you're saving per se for this rainy day, particularly with inflation eating more of our money up. Like I saw gas was 162 a liter today, and avocado is $4 or $5. Like, come on now.
Apples.
So,
I feel like apples. I can't even believe apples these days. Like everyone's like, I'm like, no one's eating apples in our house anymore.
Honestly, Laura, I was making chicken soup because I was sick, and I saw that like I need like 4 things. I need like chicken stock, chicken, celery, and carrots.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the celery, which is $5. I'm like, I don't need celery. Just nowadays. Like,
we can get through with
am I like cutting celery out of my budget, right? That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes to show like we've lived in a very like lucky time really for the last little bit. And obviously we know that like COVID seemed so scary, but like what was going on during that time is really now playing itself out.
Yeah,
right?
like we thought that things might normalize, but I mean, if you realize that you can get this much money for groceries, then you're probably going to keep it that way. Anyways, all this to say is that mortgage rates, even though they seem really high right now, that's just comparative to the insanely low amounts that it was, like historically low amounts that it was during COVID to stimulate spending and to give people a break on interest. So everyone went bananas. Investors bought 3, 4, 5 properties, right? And I think one of the positive things that we might see is that these investors that might have been over leveraged, they got to let go of some of these properties for actual home buyers, right? People that are looking for a roof over their head, not another place to rent.
So that might put some more inventory on the market.
Exactly,
which
especially condos. Because the condos, as soon as those mortgage payments go up, you're in a negative cash flow situation because your rents aren't covering that mortgage anymore.
Yes. Oh, this is actually a perfect segue. It's almost like I gave you the notes. I didn't though. But I work with a lot of investors, and I am an investor myself. But I do think it's really important what you noted. Like people get over leveraged and they get into some bad sticky situations. I think for the most part though, and correct me if I'm wrong, the people that you talk to on a daily basis, like everyone kind of wants to be an investor.
Sure. And I think that everyone should as soon as they got the equity. You pull that out and you double down, right?
So let's talk about that a little bit. Who is like, do people come to you and say like, oh, I wish I was an investor, but like I'm not an investor? Like do people kind of, they have this idea in their mind of like what an investor looks like, the type of job they have. But my guess is like you deal with like everyday people who are also investors. Is that correct?
For sure.
Yeah.
I think that the number was something like 50% of the purchases that were in 2022 were a second and third property purchase, right? So you see a lot of just like mom and pop investors that have 2 or 3 doors. And that's great. You know, one could be for your kid or your future kid or what have you, right? This is really good hedging, and these are assets that are going to continue to appreciate. So I implore anyone that's already in the market to not go with what their parents might have told them, which was pay your mortgage down and sit pretty, right? Like there's a lot of really great benefits to, you know, leveraging the bank's money, and honestly like 4 or 5% like still isn't that much.
Well, that's just it, right? Like it looks, you were saying like the mortgage rates look bad compared to what they were, but really if you ask your parents, like my dad's 76, if I ask him, like his first mortgage I think was like
18%.
18%, exactly, bang on. So you know, it looks bad now, but it still is quite healthy. I think a lot of people also, correct me if I'm wrong, audience, I don't know, they have like this idea of what an investor looks like, right? And they think it's like a wealthy person already who can afford to buy multiple properties, right? But the majority of the investors I work with, honestly, like teachers,
pretty modest.
We have policemen who are like pretty like average paying jobs, average people who understand the value of investing into real estate. Now, I think, you know, obviously you can invest in lots of different things. I'm not here to say real estate's the only thing. I particularly like it. And
it's
I
my
think
jam.
And it's your jam, but that's what we do for a living, right?
And I am actually going into venture capital as well and looking at investing in startups in the prop tech and fintech space that can help with the housing crisis, that can help with people getting in as real estate investors. I want to briefly talk about one platform that's so accessible. So have you heard of fractional home ownership?
I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
Okay, so it's a fairly new concept.
Yeah.
And before, fractional ownership was like you getting 6 friends together to buy a property.
A joint venture.
Yes. And that's on the table, right?
Yes.
And we can unpack that later. But that's pretty straightforward, right? Like find as many people as you need to cobble 10% or so down payment together. And if it's your first one, then you can do that, right? And that works. Not all of you can maybe live in the house, but you can rent it out and share it. But fractional homeownership is basically enabled by a platform. So there's one particular one. There's a couple in Canada. There's Addy and Buy Properly.
Okay.
So Buy Properly is an online platform. You can go check it out, buyproperly.ca. And you can actually invest in a real property for $500, $2,500, $3,000, whatever. And you can see what your ROI is going to be on that property and choose which one you want in a particular area. It could be
so
a
it's kind of
fiveplex.
like you're putting your $500 into a fund, so you own that fractional piece, right?
Yeah,
like
and it's a
the
real
relative
asset, and so your money is going to appreciate at the same pace as that asset. Plus, you're entitled to dividends from the rental payments.
Well, and you know what's so good here? Because a lot of people, like, they want to be investors, but they don't want to be landlords.
Yes.
Like, people fear being landlords because it does require work.
hard.
It requires efforts. There are obviously nightmare stories, and there's some
Yes,
fantastic
there are.
stories. But
There are.
it's not, if you're going to be a landlord for 40, 50, 60 years, chances are you're going to have a situation at some point or another, and people fear that, right? So this sounds like a great
So
opportunity.
this is like for your like basic entry level, like, oh my God, I can't, where am I going to get $100,000 to afford a house? I can't get a house. I can't get a house. That sucks. Okay. And I don't have an answer for you other than buy something in Halifax or something like that and rent that out just to get your foot in the door. Buy a pre-construction condo. You do it all the time. You can do your 10, 15% deposits on those. You're not paying a mortgage until it's actually closed. And once it's closed, it's appreciated at way more than an average property because you have a land lift. You know, it was like literally nothing before in that area. So it's going to go up much more and faster. And then you can get a mortgage for like 100% of that value and get your money back.
So before we talk about the refinancing, because I think that's such a great place to go, I just kind of want to talk to, say, you know, like the 20, 22-year-old right now who is thinking, I don't know if I'll ever be able to afford a home in a place like Toronto or you know, other cities around the world, but certainly in this country, like prices have gone up everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So it's, how do I afford this thing? What should they do now to get their ducks in a row for the future? Do you have any tips for them?
There's two kinds of people here. There's some that can potentially tap the bank of mom and dad. And this, you know,
and I hate you but love you.
And we love you and we hate you. And I am such a person that did have to tap the bank of mom and dad. Okay.
Shit, I didn't even think to ask.
Right? And, you know, so if your parents are sitting on a house, a lot of people wait until they pass away to, you know, do that. And there's this thing called a living will. There's also something called a reverse mortgage where they can take the money out of their house, stay in their house, not have to pay the payments on that until they pass away. And then like 50% of the equity goes back to repay the loan. And then the rest is in the will or what have you that goes to the heirs. But the fact of the matter is, like, you don't need your parents' money when you're 50. You need it right now because you're paying an average of $2,600 a month for a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto. How the hell are you going to save for down payment when 60% of your salary is getting eaten up by living expenses?
Yeah, it's going to take you so long to save that up, and by the time that you've saved up the $100,000, well, guess what? Now it's $150,000 that you needed.
And so Toronto real estate doubles every 10 years. So if you could get these principles together and say, look, mom, dad, property values increase and double every 10 years. This is my salary. This is what my rent is. I'm never going to get in the property market at this rate. And, you know, it would be massively beneficial for my long-term success if I could start building equity and self-sustain now and, you know, just have a roof over my head, to be frank.
Well, I love how you're even formulating this conversation because I think it comes down to you as the person to really broach this subject. Not every parent is just like, no, they don't even know this necessarily, right? Like when we think of my parents certainly were like, pay down your mortgage. That's the end of it, right? So you might need to bring this up to them because they might not know that these things exist. And they might say, well, honey, you're going to get my money when I die. So it's great. But you're like, no, but I really need it.
Here's the problem with that.
I need it now. So I think it's
important. I
important.
don't want to expedite your death, right?
Exactly.
Like you're making me want to expedite your death, Mom.
Yeah, so let's not do that. But come at it, I think, with a level of education, like you said, like get educated on what a reverse mortgage means and what maybe some options are for your parents. You might also not realize, like, like maybe sometimes your parents are sitting on more money than you think.
You
Just
realize.
because they live a very conservative lifestyle and they're not very flashy doesn't mean that they haven't saved.
Boomers are extremely austere. They are not flashy. They are very practical and probably scoff at a lot of our spending habits. But yeah, basically, I often broker these conversations for my clients, like for the millennial or Gen Z child and the parents, and lay it out for them and help them sort of understand the terms. And maybe that's a loan, right? Maybe they're just loaning you the down payment. We're saying it's a gift, but you know the expectation is that you'll refund, you'll pay them back if that's what you need to do.
Right.
Right.
You just happen to repay them back,
or they
upon their death, and
or
then
they can be on title, right? They can have
Yes.
a piece of it if they're worried about maybe you're not mature enough to handle the property taxes and the heat and everything else, and they want to. Maybe they're kind of the control freak types, right? Just do what you make some concessions. Okay, fine, you'll be on title with me, right?
Well, and it requires a little negotiation on your part, but I'm so glad that you brought that up because so just getting the down payment is one thing, and that's very difficult, but it's also not easy to get mortgages, right?
No.
Like a lot of people, let's say you're doing some freelance work or you know, you're a commission person like me, like you need 3 years of commission payments just to even walk into the bank, or they're going to turn you away and they're going to say no way.
And then the way that they're looking at your income is there's a really great rule of thumb where 4 times your income is the amount of mortgage that you can afford. So if you make $100,000 a year, you can qualify for a $400,000 mortgage, assuming you don't have some ridiculous debts like a $2,000 Mercedes payment a month or something like that.
So
right?
don't buy
That
the
would throw it off.
Mercedes.
Yeah, not unless you don't have a mortgage.
Yeah.
So that's me. So in any case, that's a really good rule of thumb. So to further that, if you only make 50 grand a year, then you can only get a roughly $200,000 mortgage. You're gonna need a co-signer.
Right.
Where are you gonna buy something like for that amount?
Right. Or we start going down the path of trying to think of ways we can put a bigger down payment down, and that obviously changes things. So
you can also get your parents to hold the mortgage for you, and this is assuming that again, this is like a very privileged situation that you may or may not be in. But as I said, so many parents have zero mortgage balances. Maybe they have multiple properties. They can, instead of getting hit with capital gains for taking that money out and giving it to you straight up for the down payment, they could actually be a private mortgage holder for that loan and make 3 or 4%. And then you're not worried about qualifying for a bank loan because they basically bought the house outright. They hold the mortgage, you pay your parents.
Jesus, this is so smart, and I think, and I should have probably brought this up at the start, but the importance of working with a mortgage broker, guys, like not just going into the bank. Now, I'm not saying, look, my dad grew up working for a bank. I had summer jobs working for the bank. It's not, I'm against the bank. It's just, and many of our mortgages come from the bank.
Sure.
But it's, you need someone on your side to like literally sit you down and talk about what all of your options are. Maybe you can really speak about the difference between, say, someone walking into a bank to get a mortgage and someone working with someone like yourself.
Well, someone that works at a bank is only familiar with that particular bank's particular mortgage products, and they work for the bank and not for you. So they would certainly never say, you know what, why don't you just not use us and you should just ask your mom and dad for this money, right? They're not going to do that. Or, hey, you know, if you went to another bank, they could give you a higher qualifying amount for your mortgage, because if you go to an alternative lender, while the rate may be a little higher, they are more lenient, and instead of 4 times your income that you would qualify for, you could stretch it to 5 times. So you just don't know all your options. However, banks are good for pre-approvals. They can just spit out a pre-approval for you like that, right? Like, I'm not saying don't do that. It's good to rate hold. Often I'll just send my clients to the bank to get a rate hold and a pre-approval. That's fine. And then
come back to you whenever the time comes.
As soon as you actually have a physical property you want to buy, then we'll shop it around. But you don't have any leverage when you go to the bank. At least if you start at the bank and then go to a broker, you know that you have a baseline rate, and then if your broker can do better, that's great.
That's a good tip. I like that. Also, not all mortgage brokers are created equally. I say this all the time. Not all real estate agents are created equally, but for today, not all mortgage brokers are created equally because, you know, with experience, you start to learn some of the tricks of the trade. You also develop relationships with people, and you can get some things done sometimes that other people can't. And so it's really important if you are thinking about growing wealth in real estate, and you want obviously to get the first property is big. But, we also have to start thinking with the mindset of how can I get my third, my fourth, my fifth property, right? So you want to be working with a mortgage broker who's investor savvy.
Yeah. And as soon as you get 4 and more properties, the banks are going to start giving you a lot of headaches.
Right.
You're really going to need a broker to manage that because...
So 1, 2, and 3, you're good, but
kind of thing.
fourth property,
4,
generally
5,
speaking.
it gets hairy because now you're over leveraged in a way, right? Like you've got all these doors. The banks will only take half of the rent payments in account when they're looking at your income qualifying. So even if your condo is making $3,000 a month on rent, but the mortgage payment on that is like $3,000 also, they'll look at it as you're only getting $1,500 a month on rent, and that you have a deficit of $1,500 a month.
Right.
And so when you times that by 3, 4, now it's like hairy. But a different lender would look at and take 80 or 100% of those rents, or a private lender wouldn't care at all and say, here's your money because it's a fix and flip anyway, and it's a short-term loan, and that's it.
Right.
No questions asked.
Yeah, so you see that goes to the importance of working with someone who can really set you up today for maybe what you might want to do in the future. Speaking about investments, something I talk to a lot of our clients about, which sometimes it's like the light bulb goes off in their head. They don't even realize it, right? It's like, I don't have access to any more money. It's all tied up in my property. So there's just no way that I can buy another property. But there's this wonderful, beautiful thing called refinancing. Maybe you can touch on that and how that helps people maybe afford their second or third property.
Right. There's 3 kinds of refinance. There's one where, let's say you have just even numbers, $1 million house, $500,000 mortgage. So you got this $500,000 gap. So you can basically, if you're suburban or urban area, you can refinance up to 75% with any lender easily. And so you can take that $250,000 and put it on another property or pay down your debt, which I highly recommend because, a lot of people are carrying around
like debt outside of your mortgage payment.
Yeah, 20% debt.
Credit card debt.
Make sure that you do reduce your credit card debt and make sure that your cash flow is optimal. So refinancing is really great for debt consolidation as well as furthering your investment decisions. So that's a classic refinance, but you have to be careful because if you have a 5-year term and you're only 2 years into that 5-year term, your penalty for breaking that mortgage and obtaining a new higher mortgage amount might supersede the benefits of actually doing it. If you're going to take a $40,000, $50,000 hit on that, that doesn't make sense. You should sit and wait. But there's 2 other options. One of them is a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. You can get 65% of your home value on a HELOC. So instead of that 75% where you get $250, you can get $150 on a HELOC, and you can do that if you're already with like Scotia or TD or CIBC or any of those guys. They do those.
Okay. Now, what happens there? So you're only paying interest on the amount that you use. So when you refinance, you're already paying, it's in your mortgage payment. So you're already paying the interest on it. So if you don't need the money right away, or you're not purchasing something like tomorrow, you might want to go down the HELOC route.
Yeah, but it's a lower threshold. So a lot of people are over 65% already. Right? So that's just off the table. But a bank will offer you a HELOC without breaking your first mortgage because it's in second position behind that first mortgage. Now we have a third option, which is a classic second mortgage. These are more expensive. They'll go up to 75% or 80% of the loan to value of the home. And these are something where, you better make it worth it, right? Because you're paying 10, 11% on that. So whatever you're buying or using that for needs to generate a lot of income to make that worthwhile for you. But it is on the table for like emergencies. A lot of reasons I see people use a second mortgage is like, for instance, they're closing on a property, but stuff hit the fan, and so you need an extra.
You can swear on here. You
whatever.
Can say
shit hit the fan, or your bank pulled out, and so you need to help them out, or you have a business deal that's going to go through, and you're going to like lose your shirt completely if you don't get this money yesterday. So the benefit of a second mortgage is it can be done in like a week if you have an appraisal. So there's the speed element, and there's the no fuss in terms of document element to second mortgages. So if there's a legitimate and urgent need for the money, then I would recommend the second mortgage route.
Awesome. I'm like I was saying to you previously, I'm an investor in real estate. Now, I've only gone down the pre-construction route because for me at the time, I didn't have all the funds to save. I didn't have the $150,000 that I needed for a down payment. And what I liked about that option was that I could pay for the installments or the down payment like over the course of time, which you did all the heavy lifting and explaining that for me previously. But it's kind of funny, when I got to investing in real estate, I was telling the story about, my husband really was at the forefront of where we're going to buy our home and what we can afford. And I remember kind of broaching the subject, like, I really think we should invest in real estate. And my husband, like, he invests, just not really in real estate. And he was kind of like, look, like, I want to pay down our mortgage on our home too, very conservative. And I was like, okay, but like, like, I do this for a living. I help other people invest in real estate. And it's incredible. I sat with these lovely women who I didn't realize at the time, but they were all married. I've never met their husbands. They were buying their first investment property with us. And now since then, they've bought like, I think 6 or 7 more properties.
As like a little group?
As like a little group. And or it's like sometimes 2 of them do it, sometimes all 3, like they kind of dabble in it. And it's so funny. I asked them like, oh, like, what do you have to ask people what they do for a living and retired or, I'm a stay at home. But I really got involved in investing in real estate because I realized like my husband's at work and I don't know much about the finances, and I really wanted to do something for myself. I really wanted to start creating wealth that I believed in. So I'm not suggesting like do things behind your partner's back but sometimes you really do have to take the bull by the horns a little bit.
And I am suggesting that there is a 50% divorce rate.
So that too.
So like you really don't want to be high and dry, right? Like you don't want to wait until a worst case scenario where you didn't have any assets of your own or any sort of legacy of your own there.
And you know what's so funny? It's not even so much because people will say, well, yeah, but we have to split anything. Anyway, I think it's what's more important, what I've learned more about the process of investing in real estate is having the conversations. Like I wouldn't have even known where to start. So now it's kind of like I'm not, my back's not up against the wall, and I can learn and have conversations with people like you, and I can kind of get my ducks in a row before anything's gone wrong. Not suggesting that anything's going wrong, but I didn't touch black there. There's no black around, touch wood. But you just never know, right? And so it's important to not be completely like, oh my God, the sky is falling, my world is falling apart, and now I don't even know what's in the bank account. I don't even know how to get a mortgage. I don't even know how to have a conversation about these things. And so that was really, really inspiring to me to say to my husband, like, look, I get it. You don't want to invest in pre-construction condo, but this is what I'm going to do with my money.
Right.
And I went that like next week and went and bought myself a pre-construction condo.
Yes.
Right? Now, you're an investor as well.
Yep.
Do you have any stories like that you might want to share?
I bought my first pre-construction condo with REC team.
This was not planned as a commercial.
And well, you guys have the best deals. So the biggest thing with pre-construction is like get in early, because there's a direct relationship to the ROI you're going to get from that project and how early you got in there. So you want to get rock bottom, like early access to these projects, which you guys do really, really well.
Yeah.
And I can't believe what a good deal we got. It was only a $365,000 one bedroom, like I think it was like 700.
My God, I haven't heard prices like that in
One
so
Jarvis.
long. I can't even believe
Jarvis
it. Yeah, no, I remember
and
that was
so
2 years ago.
I'm really bullish on Hamilton. I think for good reason. It was like gangbusters, going up 30% a year.
We've sold so much in Hamilton lately, and the prices now, like we're selling things at $700,000.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
Hamilton. Yeah, so like that's the
bedroom.
delta, guys. In 2 years, technically on paper, it's not like Laura can sit here and do anything with that money, but
well, that's the whole thing, right? Like, the delta looked really good in 2022 and then not as good in 2023, but by the time it's complete in 2024, like the reason I was bullish about Hamilton in general is because when you're looking at an investment property, you want to look at infrastructure spending. Is the government putting money into the infrastructure in that area or that city? And other demographic things like, are immigrants coming to that area? Is there a lack of housing supply in that area? Is there a turnover? Is it gentrifying and things like that? And
well, the three levels of government are putting $48 million worth into
It was over $1 billion.
a billion. It was, yeah, like
over $1
it's
billion.
crazy, right?
Yeah.
So those are always good signs, right? Being close to transit, or if they're building transit, like you know that means there's a lot of money going in, and you know, not that it's too big to fail, because I don't say that about anything, but it's as close to a guarantee that you're going to get that obviously people are going to start moving into this area, and that's going to increase appreciation.
Yeah, and so I bought this because my partner Luis, like, I had a property but he didn't,
right?
And he wanted something of his own, so we just like pooled our shekels together, and honestly sometimes we had to like borrow on our cards to make these payments, quite frankly, right? But like, this is one situation where you can borrow from credit to make the down payment, because they're deposits, it's not down payment. But if you were to buy a residential, like, resale property, you cannot leverage other debt as down payment. So that's one really great bonus of pre-construction. And, you know, you can beg, borrow, steal, do what you gotta do, make it happen, right?
Well, sometimes, you know, people always think like I have to have money first. And I think what sometimes people don't see is that people, they figure it out.
Yeah.
Like I've had other guests on that are like, are you kidding me? I've been literally eating ramen for the past 3 years just to figure it out. So like, get over the ego of I have to have the fancy car and the fancy clothes.
You're in it, right? Like, you sign the document, and then like every 6 months you're just like, okay, like, this is coming. We got this other.
It acts like a forced savings plan in a way.
That's exactly
you're like,
what
shit,
it
I
was.
have this payment, so I can't go out and have dinner.
That's
I can't
exactly
go do this.
right? And our money's locked up in it. We can't go and, you know.
And I gotta tell you guys, nothing feels better. Like, I know going out with friends and having fun, spending money, I like doing all those things too, feels good. But nothing feels as good as when you get to look your friends in the face and say, yeah, but I put down $100,000 and that $100,000 has made me 200.
Yeah, it's all about doubling that dollar.
Yeah. Like, that's where you really get to win, and hopefully inspire your friends to start doing the same. And maybe you could start doing things like cheaper together. You know, you surround yourself with like-minded people, and that makes life a little bit easier.
Like, we both love clothes, right? Yeah. I'm definitely a fashion whore, and my sort of self-imposed limit on spending is I only buy mostly secondhand. So I'll like whatever, consignment, Common Sort, Value Village, stuff like that. I just have a really good eye.
Yeah.
You know, I go through the racks, like, I just skip everything.
Yeah, you always have the best outfits.
Yeah,
like, I see you online. I'm like, oh man, this girl.
Yeah, so like, I know that I like to buy clothes. Okay, check, I get that. But I can't be going to the mall and paying full pop every time.
So
it's
can you find ways to still do the things that you love? You want to be happy, of course, and enjoy your life, enjoy your hard work. But real estate gives people such an opportunity, I think. And then in the future, owning that real estate and pulling it out or selling it, maybe you want to start a business one day, and now you kind of have this like beautiful little nest egg.
Well, there's, you know, and the whole thing with the condo, in the pre-construction condo in Hamilton is like, we're not going to live in it, right? Like, Hamilton isn't for me specifically. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people need to get over that too, where it's like, but I want a place in Toronto. It's like,
I hear this all the time.
Don't we all?
I hear this all the time. People are like, no, I want it to be really like a beautiful place, a luxurious place. I'm like, you don't need a luxury tenant.
You just have to leapfrog your way there, right? So where we're at, let's take this concrete example. We have a condo that was $365,000 back when I bought it in 2020. And now I would say there's nothing selling in Hamilton for less than like $550 as a one bedroom, right?
Yeah,
like, especially brand new. There's a major premium on things that have never been lived in. So let's say that Luis and I, we want to dump it or assign it like right away, because we're not going to live in it, right? So if we put a renter in there, we would have to have a different structure of our mortgage, maybe pay a little more and things like that. Whereas if we get rid of it right away, then we can just take that equity that we made. That's $150,000 that we just cleared. Yeah. Plus we get our whole deposit back.
And now you can go buy more clothes, or
$250,000. So we doubled that dollar.
Yeah.
And now we have $250,000 that we can make a really good down payment on something that maybe is resale.
And
or
hopefully
we buy
that's
two more pre-construction.
That's what people are hopefully seeing,
Three
right?
more
It's
pre-construction.
like, let's do it again and again. It's not about, can I do this once? It's about how many times can I do it?
Right. So while that first one didn't get us our dream home, the profits from that first, second, third one can eventually get you that dream home.
Yeah. You just can't always step right into it. I think that's a good segue because you have such an interesting backstory. And you're such like an amazing woman and confident woman, and like you get shit done. From what I know of you, what I see of you online, I like stalk you online. Like you're always up to so many things. So I'm hoping that maybe we can touch on your backstory a little bit and how you became to be in the mortgage business. Can you kind of like take me down memory lane a little bit?
Sure. And in the interest of brevity, I'll probably skip a few parts, but
sure.
or make it concise.
But we don't have to start with the day you were born.
Yeah, no, I hate when people do that. It's like, oh my God, seriously. Okay, so I was born January 6th. I'm a Capricorn. But so I grew up in Moore Park, and my parents were both real estate agents, so I come by it very honestly. But what I noticed about their lifestyle is they were always in the car, their weekends were bogarted, and they were like just running around with their heads cut off, more or less.
Yes.
This is also pre-cell phone.
Typical real estate agent.
Pre-cell phone, so they had to be somewhere, like, and then their, admin had to like draw up the documents, and it was very labor intensive. But they both did really, really well. They're award-winning real estate agents. I've always been more, I guess, in the metaphysical world than in the physical world. Like my home decor sucks. I have ADHD, and so I'm just like always doing 10 different jobs or things or projects. I like make clothes and play the bass guitar and go to concerts and like have English.
By the way, I gotta stop because the bass guitar. Thank you for bringing this up.
Yes.
Like you picked this up during COVID or something?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Like and so we'll include your Instagram because it's so fun. Like you showcasing like this hobby of yours that was started from nothing, and now you're like rocking it out. But yes, sorry,
like,
I didn't mean to. I just love the bass
keep
guitar
busy,
so much.
right?
Yeah.
So my thing isn't like crazy good customer service and running around after people in the car all the time, right? Like I want to be a desk jockey. I want to be able to work from anywhere. So in any case, I was a high school dropout because undiagnosed ADHD, and I just, it's not that I was
These were
not
different
smart,
times, yeah.
but I just couldn't be asked anymore. Yeah. So I went into the work world. So after
were your parents freaking out, by the way?
Oh my God, I got like completely blacklisted from my mom. Like, there was like, she's Jamaican, right? God. So immigrant parents are very, very heavily supportive of education and highly anti of not education. So in any case, I entered the real estate world as an office manager at a Century 21 at age 20. I met Sean Allen, who's the founder of Matrix Mortgage Global, and he was just a broker at the time. And I saw he was making a lot of money, and he's like, Laura, like you're so wicked smart and hardworking, like you should just get your agent license. And at the time, it was only like a day course.
Okay.
And something to note is that a mortgage agent license is only a 1 week course versus a real estate license that is a year and a half.
Yes.
The cost for the course is $385 versus OREA, which is $4,000 or $5,000.
Yeah.
And anyways, it's a very
That's a
low
great
threshold.
option, actually.
It's a very low barrier, honestly.
Yeah.
Like anyone that's thinking of a side hustle or having a new career switch, like it's very, very, very accessible. You can make 6 figures if you're doing 3-4 deals a month, I'd say.
Yeah.
There's a $2 trillion market. It's 1 in 4 people need a mortgage. There's clearly a need. There's only 10,000 mortgage agents versus 100,000 real estate agents in Ontario alone.
Yep.
So there's just better favorable numbers there. But with anything, there's that 80-20 rule where you get 20% of the brokers doing 80% of the business because most people don't wake up and think, how am I going to get some mortgage business today?
That's just it. It's so funny in the real estate industry and the mortgage industry. Everyone that I ever talked to is like, why'd you get into this industry? And it was like, well, I didn't want to have a boss anymore, and I wanted to be my own boss. The problem is that the average person isn't a very good boss because they don't hold themselves accountable, right? And so I think the people who really do win are like the type of people who are like, look, I still have to get up at the same time every day as if I did have a boss.
Yeah, like for me, it wasn't worth it for me to be salary because like I'm a hard worker, right? Like I'm always doing overtime.
Yeah. So you were thinking like, I'm not going to get the upside of this, right?
Totally.
Okay, so we get into the mortgage industry, and you're crushing it from the start, or?
Because I was right in the middle of all the deal flow. I was in a real estate office, so it was just falling on my lap.
Yeah.
Which was an extremely privileged position to be in. Kind of miss it.
Yeah.
But I don't miss the fluorescent lights and the dingy office and stuff. So anyways, I was 20, and then 23, 24 goes by. I open my own brokerage. I'm at the top of the Yonge and Bloor Tower at 2 Bloor Street East. 40th floor. I'm sitting at my desk. I have like 3 agents. I basically partnered with a realtor and made my own brokerage. And I was sitting there and I like hit a wall. I had this like profound experience of existential angst. Like, what am I doing? I'm literally like selling money.
Right.
And I have no mentors, and I have no team, and I have no support, and I'm spinning my wheels, and I think I want to go to school now.
So it was like literally like a quarter life crisis.
I was just done with brokering for a sec. So I went and parked my license at Matrix with Sean, and I went to University of Toronto as a mature student. You can attend U of T as a mature student if you've been out of school for 4 years, regardless of your high school transcript. Like I had 80s and I had 30s on my high school transcript. You cannot get into U of T right out of high school with
and
those
it's only
grades.
4 years.
4 years, because you're a different person.
Yeah.
You're fundamentally different.
Yeah, you've experienced
from
the real
18
world.
to 22. You're not the same kind of student, right? And I
you
was
kind of
so
know
much better.
why you're there too, right? So, you know, oftentimes we just go along with the flow, like the sheep are all going to university, so let's do it. Where this is like, no, I've experienced things, I know now more what I want, and so now I'm coming back to school with a real intent, with a purpose, right?
For sure, yeah. So I really just took the plunge. My partner was not impressed. Like, hey, yeah, I know I said I was going to do this brokerage thing, but I'm actually going to go and do school full time. Like, peace out.
Sometimes
that
happens.
I feel bad about it, but like honestly, if your heart's not in it, you're not going to perform well. So I'm not saying that you need a university degree to do mortgages. You actually just need to be 18 years old and a permanent resident in Canada without like a criminal or fraudulent history. So the bar is pretty low, like I said. But for me, I really needed to work on my own inner demons. I went to study psychology, cognitive science, and Buddhist psychology on an epic mission to unfuck my brain.
Oh, this is so cool.
I absolutely hated myself. I had like such
Why? You were so successful.
I was not, like between 15 and 22, it's just like faux success. You know what I mean? It's not like really like going for yourself. Like when you still do self-destructive things, like drink your feelings away or have abusive relationships or things like that, like you're not okay.
So there's maybe on the surface it was like you had your career and things were going, you were functioning.
Lots of people function.
But you hadn't healed something that was foundational.
Foundational, exactly. So I went on this like exploration of like, okay, so when I hit another road bump or like, you know, if I'm ever in a really bad rut again, like I'll be able to bootstrap my way out of it. I'll have resilience and I'll understand like how to learn and how to focus my attention. And I studied positive psychology, which is what do the greats, the savants, the geniuses, and the inventors do? And something that they all have in common is what you know is a growth mindset where you don't see failures as a setback, they're just lessons. And you basically
Was that really difficult for you to like shift your mindset?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because my guess is you were harboring maybe some resentment to how you were raised and the circumstances in your life. Like, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Where you're kind of like, oh, like a bit of woe is me. You know, we all kind of go through these periods, right? But to change that's not easy.
Yeah, and the biggest thing I think in terms of a shift in mindset and beliefs is anything that I want to do and aim to do, and if I work every day towards that goal, it will eventually come to pass, right? Think of Edison making the light bulb. It hadn't been done before. He had done over 100 experiments on it. It was like 187, number 187, like finally he did it, right? But imagine he just stopped after the first 10 that failed.
It was like, oh, well, right? I guess
he was committed to making it work even though it hadn't been done before. And it's this conviction that we need to have to see real success in our lives and to believe in ourselves despite everything. And if you have this conviction, then you literally, nothing can stop you.
So it sounds like learning about the brain and a little bit of how it works was really the thing that kind of opened your eyes to maybe new possibilities.
Yeah, and for me, I'm far more, like I said, I'm kind of heady. Like I like to read high fiction and nonfiction novels. I don't really like crap fiction. So like Tony Robbins, like that doesn't work on me, you know? It just doesn't work. Like I need the real good stuff he's whitewashed and repackaged and given you the Coles notes on.
Yeah.
And for me, I needed that really like deep dive into it so that I could internalize those things. And I find that when you do go to these types of like hype you up conferences, it tends to fade out.
That's my only concern with things like that, right? It feels, I don't want to say culty because I actually like Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
I've never been to one of his seminars, but like I've read his books and stuff. But it can't feel like people feel like they're taking action just by going to something like that. But that's not action because they feel so inspired when they leave or they're motivated, right?
Right.
But the problem is now what do I do after that?
A lot of people, that's the cult of self-help books, right? They think that they're helping themselves by reading the book.
Yeah.
And it's not enough to do that. Like I read the 5 a.m. Club. Great. But did I start waking up at 5 a.m.? Yes. And it changed my life.
I've read the 5 a.m. Club too, and I also wake up at 5 a.m. So we're rock stars.
Right.
So we actually took action.
Sometimes it works, right?
Sometimes it does.
Yeah. And but I've had a few false starts at waking up at 5 a.m. and it's not 100% consistent, I think.
But imagine you quit. And I think that's to your point, right? Like you're going to have these like highs and lows in life.
Yeah.
But don't let your lows feel like they define you, but also don't let the highs feel like they define you either. Like sometimes on your most successful day, you feel like you're a superstar, but that's also not sustainable.
No.
Just like the low, when you're feeling low and you're like, I don't even have hope. I don't know if I can get out of this situation. I don't know if anything's ever going to be better. Know that that's not permanent either.
Yeah. But to make real changes in your life, you need to change the people that you hang out with. And if you don't have someone to replace them yet, then just spend time alone for a while until you can, right? Like just go inwards. Like if you want to listen better and to hear your calling, to find your purpose and to find your flow. And a lot of people do want to get out of their 9-to-5 jobs and become full-time real estate investors or brokers. Like that's absolutely possible for you, but you have to do so much quiet time of researching the market, going to these investor clubs and meetings, believing that you can. Maybe you don't have a lot of money right now, but you can actually do renting of subletting and Airbnbs and stuff like that. You only need a few grand deposit to do that. People make it happen with a few $1,000s.
Yeah, you kind of got to get creative.
Yeah.
And also there is an element to hustle. You have to kind of outside of your work hours, figure it out.
Yeah.
If you want more, it's not going to be handed to you. Nothing's handed to most people, I'll say.
Yeah.
Right? There are some people where it is, but they struggle with their own problems too.
Yeah, they do.
And I think we can paint them with the same brush.
Totally.
Where it's you were handed everything, but now how do they feel successful? How do they feel accomplished? So, it's a bag of shit out there for everybody.
For sure.
It's just let's try to get through it. So you go to school. We're done that.
Yeah, so
we've
do
worked
that
on
whole
ourselves.
And remember, everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, right? So you got to cut down on your distractions and do what you got to do. I got my ADHD diagnosis and finally took the right kind of pill for that. So I had a superpower where I was able to hyper focus on one thing, which is what I am really, really productive. I kind of do. I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but
that's okay.
I think I honestly do 5 people's work in a single day if I'm on it, right? But then while I'm doing those things, something else is burning. Maybe it's my dinner.
Right.
Right? Yes. But things, the dishes are in the sink for sure,
Well, nothing ever looks the way that we kind of imagine it to be. You're a mother as well, obviously.
Yeah.
You have a partner. You're juggling a lot.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're... like you said, and then now you have all these hobbies. It really just feels like you're up to so many things and you're trying. But I think people are just too afraid to fail. They're too afraid to pick up the bass guitar and look stupid.
Yeah, or go back to school, right? That was a 5-year detour. And did I even need that degree? Technically not, because I'm self-employed, right? That was really just for me. But after I graduated, after having a son too, surprise, in my 4th year, I went and reapproached Sean at Matrix and said, I had done some soul searching. I'm what am I going to do? I don't want to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I couldn't imagine taking in people's trauma day in and day out. I would need 10 shrinks if I were doing that, so pass. So I was looking at organizational psychology, which is how to get the best out of an organization and teams and processes and things like that, right? Company culture and nurturing that. So I went back to Sean and I said, okay, what do you think about me working on the business, not in the business with you, as your chief operating officer? And I wrote my own job description and my requested salary, which, it was close enough.
Yeah.
And that was that. I started looking at how are the leads coming in? How are they being distributed? Are we using a CRM? Who's on the team? Where are our offices? We need underwriters. We need accounting. We need this, that.
So you kind of gave him a business plan, a way to grow. That's so interesting. I feel oftentimes, I talk with people and they're like, oh, well, there's no job. There's no job where I'm at. There's no place for growth. And this is the same story as myself where there was no vice president of a real estate
Right,
team. Like, that's
right.
not like a thing that
Yeah, you
exists,
made
but I
that.
created it. I was like, this is where you guys have holes. This is where I
Find
can see
holes
you.
and you mend them, and then you ask for the job description, right?
Yes.
Like you just generally
You
do
do the job first.
First.
Like, oftentimes people will want the pay first, or right? It's like, show your worth first. I literally did it for free.
For free.
Like, I did never ask for a single dollar. And then all of a
totally.
sudden you make yourself so valuable, like you would have done
Yeah.
to this organization, that the idea of losing you, it's like, well, now what do you want to get paid just to keep you there? Like,
Yeah,
just
totally. Like,
so that they
yeah, at
can't-
first it was like part-time hours, not
Yeah,
that much pay because
yeah.
you wanted to feel it out,
Yeah.
right? And then, of course, you prove yourself, and now I'm indispensable, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't even have a termination clause in the contract because it's like, we need each other.
It's such
That's
proof
it.
of like paving your own way and like figuring it out for yourself. And no one's gonna like just say, here's the way, here's the path, follow me and I'll take care of you. It's really about going out there and figuring out, finding holes, learning how to fill those holes. Like, you gotta, like, the hustle again. Like, you gotta like go out and just like figure it out for yourself and find your own way.
Yeah, and for the record, like, I was not well liked at Matrix because
Okay.
suddenly you have this like 28-year-old coming in and saying, "Did you update the CRM on that lead? I noticed that."
It was like, we
'Cause if
came
you
here
did
because we
call
didn't
them, I
like
don't
HR.
know.
Now you're kind of acting like HR.
Right.
Like, yeah.
So exactly, and it was a lot of like, people that he had known from high school and stuff like that. So I'm kind of like, hey guys, like, not acceptable to watch TikTok all day or whatever, right? Like, can we
Change is
clean
hard.
it- or like, the like drinking before 3 kind of thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
like
yeah.
like let's just chill out.
Like,
a little
actually,
bit.
like, we're here, so let's do our work. Like, work hard, play hard. Like,
and realizing when I was hitting a wall, right? Like, the agents wouldn't update the CRM. I'm sure you see this too.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's a pain in the ass every time you send a text or make a call to go and update it, right? But
and brokers are notoriously, like, real estate agents and mortgage brokers notoriously are not the most organized
they
people.
are not. And that actually goes for me too. I'm really bad at doc collection and follow up. But what we did, recognizing these basic faults in human nature for sales type people that are extroverted and highly social, is that they are not focused on details and process and structure. So we needed a different kind of person to do those kinds of tasks.
Yes.
We hired an underwriting team. We trained 6 of them, and they had like clear, guidelines on what they're supposed to do. They deal with all the document collection, submitting to lenders, ordering appraisals, doing all of the really fine detailed work where there's a lot of touch points. And they do update the CRM religiously. And it's so much better because now the brokers can just be themselves. They can
Go
manage
do what you're good at. Go
big
sell.
business. You know what a revenue generating activity is? Finding more clients. Everything else is admin work.
So we talk about this a lot. It's like, as a real estate agent, the best thing you can do is, as soon as you possibly can, is hire that admin person.
Yes.
That's the first person you hire. And even when you think, I have no idea what they would do, trust me, if you see that person sitting there next to you all day, every day, you're going to find work for them to do because you're already paying them to be there. And it goes to show, it actually helps you go get more business to pay for the person because now you're focused on the things that you're good at. That's why you got into the industry, because you like to sell. So go sell, go meet people, and let the people who are better at organizing go do those things. How big is the team now?
60.
60 people? Oh my goodness.
We were up at almost 100 at one point too. We kind of like downsized because again, like there's a lot of fat there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sometimes you expand and you contract and you expand
normal,
and contract, right?
Like the biggest changes for Matrix were really like we went national. So because again, I'm a massive nerd, I'm willing to go through massive amounts of paperwork, and so we got our national license in BC, Alberta, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. So now we had a national license. We could hire people in Vancouver and Calgary or wherever. They could join the team at Matrix, and we have a national presence now. We opened a private lending arm, so now we are the lender. And we had like regular training. We had to pivot to virtual, but we were already virtual like before COVID, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone misses going all the way to Scarborough to be in a boardroom to do a 1-hour meeting, so whatever. But it was really the awards, like writing the award submissions and the personal branding element. Like I got my LinkedIn up to 30,000 people. I got Sean's LinkedIn up to 30,000 people. And we just had this like full court press on PR within the mortgage industry. And I knew that was something that was going to be really important for me as a woman of color in my late 20s to be taken seriously in the world of financial services, right? Like I would need to have like a crew, a backing, some legitimacy, some third party objective, positive feelings towards me and my knowledge. So that's what I did for the PR of the brokerage, and that made a massive difference. Can you tell me a little
bit about how, because you do crush it on LinkedIn. I mean, you do lots of content in lots of places, but like, how did you really grow that?
It's actually really easy because on LinkedIn versus Twitter, TikTok, or anything else, when you connect with someone, they connect with you. That's not the same as Instagram. You follow them, they don't necessarily follow back.
Right.
And so it was literally turning myself into a robot at the time, because this is before they had applications to do it for you. Now you can use like Dripify.io as well as others that will automatically add people to your LinkedIn and message them and endorse their skills, which I currently use. I have to like delete people and then like re-add them or whatever. But you can target it too. Like if you were looking for real estate investors, you could go on LinkedIn, go to My Connections, search for second connections, people that you're not yet connected to, and look real estate investor in Ontario. 900 people will show up.
Right there.
Then you get to work. Connect. Like I'd be at a stoplight. Connect. On the couch. Connect. Bathroom.
Nonstop.
Nonstop. $250 a week.
It's so funny because LinkedIn is such a good place. I was just talking about this with my business partner like earlier today, where, you know, on LinkedIn, because you're going business to business, like if real estate agents, like if you look at yourself like as a business, if you want to connect with mortgage brokers, lawyers and things like that, like you know who your target audience is as well.
You know exactly who it is.
So just go after those people, where when you're putting out content, say on the TikToks of the world for end consumers, like someone who's going to buy a property. Anyone, like literally anyone might buy a property.
And you can have a targeted message to that, right? Like I have several different pipelines, like accountants. I know a pitch for accountants. Hey, do you have people that owe the CRA taxes? I can get them a second mortgage to pay that back because everything else is frozen for them.
That's smart.
That's the only thing they can do.
But that's so, you know, goes back to the point, getting creative about how you find business. Not just like, oh, I don't know where to find people, there's no one around. Like you were literally looking at the landscape and saying, how can I use this tool to like help me with my business?
I sent 100 messages on LinkedIn yesterday to investors.
So still doing it, still rocking it out.
It's money, right? Like, what?
But people think it's still the old school, and like a lot of the training companies out there say like go and door knock. It's like people.
My God,
I'm not answering my door.
Cold call is door knock. Like stop, just stop. But like cold calling, let's say, I don't answer my phone if I don't know you.
Yeah.
And I don't welcome a call I wasn't expecting.
It's not like, oh, thanks, stranger, for calling me. I actually am thinking about selling my house. I'm so glad you called.
I'm trying to like get my kid to bed right now. Get out of my face, right? Like, so you can warm up leads like this, right?
And people are online anyways. People are sitting there on LinkedIn.
And there's a way to soften them up. Comment on their posts, right? It's not just spam them as soon as you add them, right? It's about warming them up. Comment on their posts. Start a dialogue. And some other things that I did were asking magazines if I could contribute to them as a columnist, right? Like, let's say, like you can make ideas and make stories and present it to them.
People always think that magazines ask people to write.
Not necessarily.
It doesn't necessarily work like that, because it's like, oh, you know, my friend got some award or so-and-so got to speak on something and no one ever asks me. Chances are they asked to be there.
I was pounding the pavement. Like that was one situation where I wasn't exactly cold calling, but I was cold emailing.
Yeah.
And saying like, hey, I have this. And I wasn't saying, do you need someone to give you a story? I'm like, here's 3 story ideas. Can I write one?
Yes.
And then because I was so good to work with, they kept coming back to me later saying, hey, can you give me a comment on this or that? Because I was succinct. I was always knowledgeable. I was always opinionated, right? You don't want to say something that is middle line.
Yeah.
Pick a side.
Have an opinion.
And have an opinion. Even if it's not necessarily one that everyone will like.
I think I struggle with that even. Like I don't want to hurt people's feelings. I don't want to get like judged. Right? Like, you know? But you know, at some point you do have to just have an opinion, because as I think we've learned throughout COVID and everything, like everyone had an opinion, and at some point every single person was wrong. So let's just get over the fact that like You're not going to be right 100% of the time. At some point, you're going to be wrong and other people are going to be wrong. But if you stand for nothing, then who are you going to connect with, right?
No, and like the only thing worse than like being talked about is not being talked about. So,
oh, that's a good point. I love that.
We're in sales.
Yes, that's
right.
true.
Like, and if you're trying to be someone noteworthy, then you need to say things that are noteworthy in noteworthy places. And for 3 or 4 years, I was giving free content, free speeches, free panel discussions, free everything. And, you know, it's still part of the game, right? And finally in 2022, I got my first paid speaking gig, flown to Australia, did a 60-minute keynote speech on radical authenticity.
Oh my God.
For like a good chunk of money. And that was like the best week of my life, hands down, because I was literally just able to do my nerdy thing where I get to research for 200 hours and put it together and address an audience and light them up.
That's amazing.
And inspire them.
I feel like that's a whole separate conversation in and of itself. But maybe as we kind of wrap up here, because I know you had a hard out today, maybe you can just touch on like any type of advice that you would give around being authentic and what that speech was about.
Yeah, so I mean, that was it, right? Like for me, finding my passion wasn't going back and doing the same thing I was already doing, which is being a mortgage broker and simply taking the loan application, collecting the documents, and closing the deal. I realized that for me to be fully lit up and passionate about my life, I needed to pursue things in and around it, like being a public speaker, like being a thought leader, like doing podcasts with Laura, and everything else I love doing in my life. So like while you can do the thing that you're trained at and have expertise in, like it would be kind of silly if I left the mortgage business altogether after sinking 16 years in it and being a top 100 global broker. Like you just, I guess I'm done here, right? Like that's not ideal.
Yeah.
So find things where if you need to do a bit of a leapfrog and a sidestep, like start with one real estate investment and then you can drop your job and be a full-time real estate investor. And then once that starts to plateau, then you can start a real estate investment group for women and help other people get rich, right? And I think that the thing and the key to life is really to be of service to other people. When you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you can get to that plateau where you're doing well for yourself, but you're ultimately going to hit that wall and feel dissatisfied with your life. You need to be of service to others in some ways and to spend most of your time doing what genuinely lights you up.
Holy shit, that's a great wrap up. I have one last question for you. Your parents, now looking at you now, thoughts? Like you didn't stay in school. You didn't follow their path or their guidance. Your mom.
They were so happy for me to graduate, of course, right? Like
yes.
My mom ended up paying for university as well as my stepdad.
Okay, yeah.
And
but they must see you now, and they must be so proud.
Yeah.
Or they should be at least.
Mostly, they should be. Yeah.
That's for another day. But
I'm just gonna leave it at Jamaican mother.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I'm super proud of you, and I'm
you.
so proud that like you're in my circle, and you're one of the very, very like strong women that I look to, that I aspire to be
Thank you.
Because you're just up to so many things, and you're so unapologetically yourself, and I think that's such a great inspiration for everybody. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And guys, we'll see you next time.
Peace out.